Hi, it's Alaska Granny. Today I wanted to talk about prepping supplies that you need to have on hand. They may be supplies that you already have, maybe supplies that you need to rotate, replace, or even add to your prepping supply and your stockpile. And I'm going to talk today about canned food, different kinds of canned food. There are so many events that can happen in our lives that we need to have food on hand. We need to have ready-to-eat foods, easy, simple, open and eat it, or do just hardly any cooking. There are so many reasons you need to have extra food on hand. It could just be you run out of money before you run out of month. Someone in your family is sick and you don't have time to go to the grocery store. It costs a lot extra to have food delivered. It's possible, but it may not be in your budget at the same time that you need it. Many times when there are localized emergencies, even if you just want to do grocery pickup, it may not even be an actual emergency, but the foods that you want are not available. And so you go to the store to get your grocery pickup and you don't get the items that you actually want and need. So we want to have foods on hand that we can use. If the power goes out, you can still have something to eat. A winter storm blocks your roads, you still have something to eat. And just the emergency crises that can happen, the storms, just the crazy things we don't even know that can happen. For example, when the pandemic came, you pretty much hoped you had some food in your home because the grocery stores were just overrun with people who were panicking. And if you have some food on hand, you don't have to join that panic. You can hunker down and figure out what to do next. I know that that was an extreme, once-in-a-lifetime event that occurred for most of us. Emergencies come to all of us. They may not be a global pandemic, but it could just be something that you need to get a meal on the table because your family needs something to eat and you want to be able to reach into your pantry and have some food on hand. So I'm going to show you some canned foods that I think are very important for preppers to have in their stockpile so that you can keep your life going smoothly. You can keep making meals, figure out what to do next with whatever that emergency is. I like to have canned soups on hand. Chunky soups are great. You can buy some Campbell's, different kinds of soups, like this one is beef with vegetables and barley. Don't forget to add soups that you can use as sauces, such as creamy mushroom that I have here, or cream of chicken. There's all different kinds that are nice to make into sauce and pour over other things. But if you have some chunky soups that are already a meal ready to go, that's extra nice. You can just pull one out, open it up, and you have a meal. They're better if you can heat them up, but in an emergency, if you can't, you can still eat it and get a full meal. You can also then stretch the basic dried foods like rice, mashed potatoes, foods like that that you can open up a can of soup, pour it over that, and make your meal go farther. Next, look for foods that are a full meal in a can, like stew, chili, beefaroni, ravioli. There are all kinds of foods, entrees, that you can find that are already prepared in a can. Then you can just open them up, heat them up. But once again, if you couldn't heat them up, you could still have something to eat. You can take your can of beef stew, add in another can of potatoes, serve it over mashed potatoes, add another can of mixed vegetables, and you can make your meal bigger, better, and stretch it out to go farther. Then there are so many different kinds of chilies. I know this one is chili with beef. I have chicken chili. And then something to think about as an option is chili with no beans. Chili with no beans has more meat in it than just a regular can of chili. Then you can add any kind of canned beans, or even when you prepare your dried beans, you can serve this over it. Plus, a can of chili with no beans is great as a sauce over something like pasta noodles. Next, pick up some cans of fruit. But be aware, in my experience, different kinds of canned fruits, they're very nice to have on hand. They can be very expensive, more expensive than other kinds of foods, and they don't last like other kind of canned foods. I pulled out my canned foods today, and here's one that is bulging. It doesn't sit properly on the counter. It's rocking away. The bottom is bulging, even though it's only 2 months past the expiration date. It is not safe to eat. So you want to be inspecting your food regularly. Don't just buy canned foods, shove it in your pantry, and figure it'll be there whenever you need it, because that's not how it works. To be a successful prepper, you need to buy foods that you're actually willing to use. Then you need to rotate and replace them. And anything that's suspicious, you need to throw it out. Absolutely don't take a chance eating food that is suspicious. If anything on a can is bloated, if it looks leaky, if anything looks off when you open it, or if it spurts, or anything that makes you suspicious, throw it away. You don't want to risk getting sick over a few dollars worth of food. And so, unfortunately, I have to throw this can away. It would have been better if I got my full money's worth by being able to use it. We don't always get the full value out of every single penny that we spend, but we can try. Next, look at canned vegetables. There are the simple everyday canned vegetables, everything from corn, green beans, peas, carrots, mixed vegetables. But don't forget some of the less familiar ones that you may want to have on hand, such as a can of pumpkin or sweet potatoes. You can use a can of pumpkin to do all kinds of things, even adding them into chili to make it completely different flavor profile that can make your foods and your meals be more entertaining, interesting, and give variety to help us avoid food fatigue. Next, look at canned tomatoes. You can get diced tomatoes with different kinds of spices in them. Like this one is rotel, which is tomatoes and has green chilies. You can find them with all kinds of different flavor profiles. So make sure that you have plenty of tomatoes on hand. But they're not going to last forever either. I haven't had a lot of problem with tomatoes, but other people do. So you want to make sure that you're rotating your tomatoes. So don't stockpile more than you can reasonably use up. But just like your other foods, you want to use, rotate, replace. So don't have so many that you can't use and rotate them before they are no longer safe to eat. Then also you can look for cans of tomato or spaghetti pasta type sauces. These are great with just some pasta. You can make a meal. You can also add all kinds of other canned foods, fresh chopped up vegetables, maybe some bits of meat, and turn it into a delicious soup. So there's lots of reasons to want to have some canned pasta sauces. Next time you go to the store, grab a can of spaghetti sauce and a pound of spaghetti, and you have a meal that you could eat in an emergency for very little money. Canned beans are the next category of foods that I would want to have in my prepper pantry. They are very versatile. You can add them into soups and stews. You can turn them into chilies. You can turn them into even bean salads. There's a lot of different things to do with beans. They're versatile. They're full of protein. They're good for you. But then you can also look at things like refried beans, because these you can turn them into burritos, turn them into Mexican casseroles. You can even stir them into soup and make your soup really rich and filling. And then don't forget the nice big cans of baked beans. Even if baked beans aren't your favorite, I made a video about a recipe that I like to make where you take the can of baked beans and add a few things in a skillet on top of the stove and turn them into some delicious baked beans that are more like they're baked in the oven. So I'll put a link to that video in case you want to try the one skillet baked beans. Next, think about some of the kinds of canned milk. I have coconut milk here, for example, but you can also get evaporated milk. You can get media crema, which is canned cream. And there are all different kinds of milk and dairy products. Unless you never use dairy products, it's a good idea to have a few different kinds of milks on hand, because there's a lot of different ways to use them. Lastly, let's think about canned meat. Canned meat comes in so many different varieties. Here's turkey. I have crab meat. I have chicken. Here's some pulled pork. I also have things like roast beef, tuna, all different kinds of things. Here's even some ground beef. Many people like the Keystone meats. I've had a hard time finding it. It's never been available in the stores where I shop, but I have been able to order it online, and I highly recommend it because it's just the meat in the can. It's already cooked. You can open it up, stir it into soup, stews, casseroles, sloppy joes. There's lots of things you can do with a can of ground beef. And not everyone wants to can their own meat, so it's a great idea to have a variety. And let's also look for canned hams if that's something that you eat. There are so many different ways that we can bulk up our prepping supplies simply by having extra meals on hand. Because we're prepping as lifestyle insurance. Every day we want to be able to feed our families. And if we look at famine is real in some parts of the world, and while it may not ever come to us to any extreme like it is in other places in the world, we don't want our family to go hungry, to be missing a meal, to not have food security, and we can have that and provide that for our family by having some of these basic prepping supplies. So let us know in the comments below, what are some of the favorite foods that you like to stockpile, and maybe even tell us how you use them, because we don't want to just stock up on them. We want to use, rotate, replace. That's how you're a successful prepper. Something to remind yourself of why you want to keep prepping is don't complain about the results you didn't get from the work you didn't do. I hope you'll like my video, share it, please subscribe to the Alaska Granny channel.